What is going on, Ship It Nation, YouTube station? Friday night, back with my boy Rio. It's been a long time, it feels like, almost a couple of months since we've been on a live stream together. We'll bring you right in right away. We got a fun little DraftKings slate tonight. How are you doing? How's your Friday going? And how excited are you for the slate tonight?
Yeah, things are going pretty good on the tail end of this sickness. So hopefully I don't have any more guys tell me I need to blow my nose after this week. But yeah, I don't know. This is a interesting slate. The spend up options are very gross. I could see it just being a very like heavy mid tier build, and we don't really have the best value outside of a few spots. So I'm kind of just trying to, get locked in and build how I want to build tonight. And I think that's kind of what I'm leaning towards. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty big night over here for me. I got the head to head with one of the best in the DFS space, Oxen Duck. I got a head to head 1-1, 1v1 against him to get the live final seed. We had two different lineups that tied yesterday. I mean, man, it was just last couple weeks have just been like a game of inches. It feels like I got fifth place, I believe, in the 28-30, which is I'll be in there again tonight. Literally just fell like up Deuce McBride 3-pointer away from getting one. That was the night that he shot like 2 for 11 from the field. And then last night was literally just a last second Kobe White rebound that got him the tie. But I will say I did get a little bit lucky there because Kobe White had a turnover at the end of the game that kind of locked it in for me as well. So, sometimes things go your way, sometimes they don't. But as long as you put yourself in contention, I feel like you should be happy with the not the results, but with the process.
Absolutely, man. No, game of inches, you said it right. It's funny, I have my personal takes, but are you like obviously you're watching the games, but are you like a refresh your like lineups like every 4 minutes kind of guy? Or are you kind of like watch the games, go back, check your phone kind of periodically every hour or so? Where do you fall into that?
Well, so I'm in a different setup right now, but normally when I'm back home in my my office, I have the YouTube TV with all 4 games going on, usually the games that matter the most to me. But right now it's just whatever one is on TV, which is usually the ESPN or TNT one. But yeah, I'll be looking at like DK Live or like the ESPN app, watching the play-by-play. And so you just kind of, I don't know, you kind of know like what you need when you're watching the play-by-play stuff. So like I was watching the play-by-play for the Bulls game, and you just see like it's kind of delayed. So it goes from like, it was like 16 seconds to like 5 seconds. And I'm like, oh shit. And then I get like tweets from the beat reporters that say, Bulls win 116-110. And I look and I see Kobe White gets a defensive rebound. I was like, fuck, that's the only thing that I didn't need.
That's funny. I know exactly what you're talking about. Like the game will pause for a second, and then there's like 8 different lines of stats, like to fill up the last 20. But no, man, I love it. Let's shout out some people. We got Richard, Takedown, Lee, our boy Sean Sullivan in the chat, Michael, Rob Davis, Robert, but you're going by Rob tonight. He says ship this shit tonight. Al Money, we got 2 great, Justin Rice, Lyle, Colin, Charlie, Joseph, Big Ed. We got a lot of people here in chat. Shout out to them. Jake, Daniels, Ricky Rose, still one of my favorite names in here. Our guy Ricky Rose, always in the chat. Andrew, Jake, Gang Green. Sorry if I missed anybody here. Oh, we got Big Nades out here, still chatting up his PGA stuff. I absolutely love it. Has me dying every time he throws in a video. But good, man. Let's dive into it right away. Do you have any broad slate overviews? I know you kind of touched on it, but is there a key decision point 3 hours before the slate that you already have written down that will kind of dictate tonight? Or do you want to get into that as we kind of dive into games?
Yeah, I can touch on it quickly. I feel like we'll kind of naturally do it as we go through the games, because the first 2 games on the slate are the ones that we're kind of waiting on for the injury news. So it's nice that we don't really have to guess too much and backload, because obviously we have essentially the entire starting 5 for the Celtics are questionable. They are in a back-to-back. They go back to Brooklyn tomorrow. So you got to imagine that some of these guys miss, and that would definitely open up some value, mainly on like Pritchard, maybe a little bit of Hauser, Cornette. But the Sixers stuff is very important because they signed O'Shea Brissett, a DFS legend, a few years ago when he was with Indy. But they have Q tags on Grimes, Kelly Oubre, Andre Drummond, Justin Edwards, and Alex Reese. So it's 5 guys right there. Probably going to get a few of them missing. But they also did call up Jalen Hood-Schifino, and they have Jeff Dowtin on a 2-way deal. So there's a lot of moving pieces in that game that'll, do my best to break down as we go through it. But if all things were equal and we just get everybody in tonight, then it definitely seems like a much more balanced build. Because, man, it was really tough for me to find some of these values to add into the slate plan. I really didn't like what I was seeing. And even one of the most popular values on the slate, Chris Paul, is a guy that I'm not really too excited about. So I'm hoping that the injury news hits our way so we can get some clear value, because I just don't like what I'm seeing right now.
Absolutely, man. Let's dive in. We have this Celtics and Heat game first. You had mentioned it. It feels like the whole starting 5 is questionable tonight. I have Al Horford as probable. And then obviously Burks, Smith, and Jovic are out for the Heat. But what are we thinking here as we kind of dive in to this game of the Celtics are favored by 8 and a 214 total?
Yeah, so there was kind of a lot to talk about on the rotation for Miami last game. I don't know if it's going to be the same tonight, but Kel'el Ware got benched in the second half for Haywood Highsmith. And I think that experiment might be over. I really like Kel'el Ware as just a prospect. I think he's got a lot of tools to be a very solid player. But just right now, the way that the roster is kind of shaking out for Miami, I don't know if he really fits in well. I also saw a mock trade that it was like a Jazz Heat trade for next year, trading Laurie and Jordan Clarkson for like Kel'el Ware, who else was it? Nikola Jovic, and then like 2 expiring contracts, which would be kind of interesting. I think that we kind of missed out on a promising rookie like Ware when we got Cody Williams over him. But that doesn't really matter tonight. As a DFS game, though, I don't love this one right now. Assuming these guys are in, you could make a case for some of these Miami guys. It's really just Tyler Hero, but even him, like, he's priced up almost 9K. I think it's going to be tougher for him to find a ceiling in such a low-scoring game environment, but I don't mind the matchup. I've never really worried too much about firing guards, pick-and-roll heavy guards in particular, against this Boston defense, just because they don't really help off a ton, so it kind of leads to a lot of pick-and-roll volume. So I'd be okay with him. I'd be okay with Andrew Wiggins, just mainly because the price is good and he's playing a lot of minutes. But that's probably it on the Miami side. On the Boston side, it's basically just waiting for the injury news. If these guys are in, full fade for me. These prices are way, way up there in a really poor game environment. But some if-then scenarios. So if Tatum misses, Brown would be a strong play, but not a lock by any means. He's only averaging 47.6 DraftKings points per game in games without Tatum this season, which is okay for his price, but I do think that there's some higher upside options in that 8K range and even cheaper. If Jaylen Brown were to miss, I do think Tatum becomes a little bit more interesting because he's averaging 51.2 DK points per game. Just the usage and point per minute stuff all looks much better. I think the matchup is pretty good for Boston tonight, just with the way that Miami plays a lot of zone defense. They allow a ton of 3-pointers. So I'd be more willing to play Tatum if Brown were out than I would to play Brown if Tatum were out. If both those guys miss, which I think is a possibility but not very likely, then Derek White and Payne Pritchard are the 2 guys that I would look to. You're basically getting the same usage and per minute production from these guys. Obviously, Derek White is going to play more minutes, but Payne Pritchard is $1,600 cheaper. So I would lean Payne Pritchard just for the discount because we don't really have a ton of great value right now, and he kind of fills that void that we're missing. But Derek White would have a really solid usage role. He does see a huge increase in usage. Payne Pritchard is around 7%. Derek White is like 11% bump with those guys off the court. And then Porzingis, I think he's going to be back tonight. It sounds like he was close to returning last game. I think he was at shoot around this morning. So it sounds like he'll be back. And then if we get a situation where like 3 or 4 of these guys miss, then we're talking about firing up a bunch of these guys. Like the Luke Cornett, Sam Hauser would have a really good matchup. Kada, Torrey Craig would look really good. I don't know if they have these G League guys available, but like the Jared Walsh and Baylor Shireman guys would look pretty good. I don't even know if I pronounced that right. I think it's the first time I've ever said that name out loud. But yeah, so it's just a wait and see approach. I think that I did the best I could breaking it down, but it's kind of tough. There's just so much unknown. They are favored by 8 too, so you would think that these guys are playing. That's kind of what the spread indicates. But I think that it would move in a pretty big way if we get multiple of these guys out.
Yeah, absolutely. And to kind of touch on what you said, if all these guys are out, obviously Pritchard, obviously White, would Hauser be your favorite of, you know, the Cornets and the Walshes at 4,200? Would you rank him one aside from Pritchard and White?
I'd probably go Cornet over him.
Okay.
I just have I have an issue playing Sam Hauser because, so obviously he had a huge game against Utah. I would say the matchup is kind of similar in some ways with the way that Miami plays defense, but the dude took 19 threes. That's just like, if he did that again, I'd for sure play him because he's probably going to make, you know, at least 35% of them and pay off in a decently big way. But there's also a lot of ways where he fails if he's not making his shots, which shooting is highly variant. He's not the greatest shooter in the league by any means. He's pretty good, but yeah, I would probably go Cornet just because you do have the rebounds and like a double bonus to fall back on for him.
Absolutely. And you know, personally, if Porzingis was ruled out in this game, and to mention, you know, I agree with you exactly what you're saying about where I think, you know, those minutes are continuing to come down. I wouldn't be surprised to see Highsmith thrown into the starting lineup tonight. If Porzingis is out, personally, I find a little more interest in Bam versus Hero. You didn't really touch on him much. 9,300 big boy tag. Are we kind of in the right boat there, or is that kind of just a little too cute, too expensive type of play on 7 games?
No, I mean, there's definitely upside there. They've been running a lot of their offense through him too. You see like the assist and usage numbers look pretty good over the last, you know, couple weeks. He's definitely paid off the price tag a few times. It's just a really tough matchup. I really think that Al Horford can do a good job shutting him down, but yeah, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. The theme of the slate is just everybody seems a little bit overpriced is kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes it tougher in trying to distinguish where you're going to spend your money. But no, you broke that down great for the information that we have now. Moving on to the other, you know, kind of hard game you talked about to kind of go through. Pacers and Sixers. Pacers are favored by 13 with a 231.5 total. You kind of touched on the injuries, but we're waiting on a ton of news from the Sixers. And we also are looking at a questionable tag for Siakam. You kind of touched on it, but, you know, to kind of finish the thought, where are we going here and what are your thoughts before we move on to some games we can actually talk about with some confidence?
Yeah, so this one is kind of interesting because obviously the injury stuff on the Philly side is going to be dictating where we go on the slate. As it stands right now, I think Butler is probably the best value on the slate. We saw him get the start last time, played 35 minutes. I mean, I've always liked Jared Butler. He was on the Jazz a few years ago. Just a, you know, solid player. Was comparing his per 36 numbers the other day with Sean and Chet against Jeff Dowtin, which is crazy. Like, I didn't even realize this, but Dowtin's been in the league for a while. He's 27, and Jared Butler's only 24, 25. It's just kind of crazy to think about, but
it's crazy that 27's old, right? You know, like
yeah.
He's been in there. It's crazy as we get older. Those are what we're talking about. But anyways, continue.
Yeah. So they called up Jalen Hood-Schifino and they just signed O'Shea Brissett. That kind of tells me that Philly's going to be sitting some guys out. Oubre and Drummond seem like the most likely guys. I mean, Quentin Grimes has turned into prime MJ last couple of weeks. I mean,
that's your boy, man. That's your boy. It has me down. I almost made a joke about it, but I didn't really want to follow through.
It's so frustrating. Not even like I'm happy to see somebody go to a new situation and play well, but Nick Nurse, man, like, what are you doing? Saying you're going to dial back these guys' minutes, and then Grimes plays 40 minutes in a game they really weren't even close to winning. Like, it's just weird stuff going on over there. But he did only play 31 minutes last game. I think that's probably going to be where he's at moving forward. I mean, he could still get it done, I guess. He's still putting up, you know, nearly 50 DK points in each of the last 3 games. So if you want to play him, you can. I will have none. But if we do get a situation where Grimes and Oubre were to miss, or any two of Grimes, Oubre, and Justin Edwards, that's going to open up a lot of minutes for Ricky Council. And I would definitely have a lot of interest in him on this slate. He's just, when he's out there, man, if you watch these Sixer games, like when he touches the ball, it's very rarely leaving his hands. Like he's gonna try to get his shot. He's kind of wild out there, does a lot of weird moves, but he has like the Reggie Miller shot, the two-handed push shot, which is kind of cool to see. I used to shoot like that when I was younger because I wasn't strong enough. But But yeah,
you gotta use the legs. You gotta get those legs into it.
I know it took me a while to realize that. Like when I got a lot better at basketball after I stopped playing in like organized basketball. But yeah, it's mainly just the legs. Legs are everything. But yeah, so I like Ricky Council just because he's gonna do stuff when he's on the court. Like he's a very a decently high usage guy when he's on the court. And we get a situation where he's starting, he's probably playing a ton of minutes tonight. If Down is in, I think we do have to keep an eye on him, if he's inactive or if he's active, because he's on a 2-way deal. And they did just call up Jalen Hood-Schifino, so that I think those are two guys that would kind of negatively correlate. If Down is out, then I think Jalen Hood-Schifino is kind of interesting as a dart throw GPP min price option. And then if Drummond is out, I kind of think Adem Bona is in play regardless, because I do like the matchup. Pacers have been really bad against centers lately, giving up a ton of rim points. He's been playing really well lately. He's a rebounding machine when he's on the court. I think they should want to get a better look at him, and they are dialing back Yabu's minutes a bit. So that's kind of what I'm thinking on the Sixers side. On the Indy side, I'm not paying these price tags for these guys either. So like what I'm kind of thinking for Indy tonight, these are my thoughts I had written down for my notes. I love the matchup against the Sixers. The Sixers have been one of the worst defenses in the league post All-Star break, second worst in defensive rating over the last 11 games. They have a very important game tomorrow against the Bucks again, where those teams are like neck and neck in the standings right now. So I think that there's a good chance that they dial back the minutes on the starters and let some of the bench guys play a little bit more. That would just be like a death sentence for DFS if you're considering Haliburton, Siakam, Miles Turner. Andrew Nembhard too. I don't think that he's really much at play at the price tag, but I do think that it makes I have a weird feeling that I think one of the guys of like the Mathurin, TJ, Toppin, Thomas Bryant, even like Jarris Walker or Ben Shepherd, I have a feeling like one of those guys puts up a decently big not GPP winning score, but I think that they put up a decently good score for their price tags. I kind of think it's Toppin at 3.5K, especially if Siakam were to miss. I doubt he's going to start. They'll probably go with Jarris Walker, which would make him a very solid value as well. But I do think that just the way that Toppin plays could set up very well here. The Sixers have been giving up a ton of transition scoring and rim points lately. So I could see a scenario where he plays maybe like 3 to 4 minutes extra. He's not playing garbage, but I could see him putting up a decently solid fantasy score at his price tag. And then Mathurin as well. I think he's going to be very aggressive coming off the bench. They've been kind of running him ahead of Nesmith a little bit more. You don't really need Nesmith defensively tonight, so I could see that happening again here. But some rules I'm setting, I mean, you could probably safely X out like Haliburton, Siakam, maybe not Turner, just because I could see him being efficient in his minutes. But Nembhard for sure, I think you could probably X out. But I'm not going to play more than one of the guards, so max one. Hallie, Nembhard, and TJ McConnell, if you're considering any of the three. I'd be max one Mathurin and Nesmith. Max one Toppin and Siakam if Siakam plays. And then max one in Miles Turner and Thomas Bryant. But I do think that we get a decently solid fantasy score from one of those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, even if this game spread was like 5 or 6 and this game was competitive, I don't believe there's any chance Haliburton plays big minutes, after coming back. And obviously, like you said, a big game tomorrow. Same kind of goes for Siakam, 8,500. Man, that's a big boy tag. Turner will be the only guy that I can really get behind. But absolutely love the idea of kind of building with one of these guys off the bench. I think those prices are very fair and offer some big upside. You said not necessarily tournament winning upside, but you look at a guy like Obi Toppin or Thomas Bryant. As of right now, not getting a ton of ownership. I think that will grow throughout the day. But I mean, both these guys shown the capability to be able to score plenty of points very quickly. So no, absolutely love it. Moving on here, Clippers and Hawks. This one's a fun one for me. Hopefully you would agree. Obviously Norman, Capella, and Nance are out. We're waiting on the Ben Simmons news. And then Trae Young is probable. We have a 233 total with Clippers favored by 4.5. I anticipate this game staying close. I mean, both the offenses have been playing outstanding on both sides. Where are we looking at? And, specifically for me, I'm not finding much love in the Hawks. Talk me off that, and let's talk about what I think is the best game on the slate.
Yeah, I think you could definitely make an argument. This is one of the best games on the slate. Game total would reflect it. tight spreads, all the things you want to see. But like you said, like the pricing, man, it's just tough to make a case for these Atlanta guys. Like I could see Trey having a good game, maybe puts up like 25 and 12, 15 maybe. Like that's not necessarily enough to win you a GPP tonight. But yeah, like both these teams playing really good on offense right now. The Hawks have been a little bit worse on defense. Clippers kind of have been as well. They're bottom 11 in defensive rating post All-Star break. But they'll be getting Kawhi back to kind of help out a little bit. They have been missing him for a handful of those games. But the Hawks do bring the pace, third in pace right now. And yeah, both teams just playing really good on offense. So we could definitely see a game being high scoring. I definitely have a lot more interest in the Clippers side. James Harden, I talk about it all the time with Dyson Daniels, so I won't rehash the same stuff that I say, but I'm not too worried about playing pick and roll heavy guards against Dyson, which Harden will be doing tonight. He's been playing great lately, playing a ton of minutes, around 40 minutes a night. Both these teams need wins, so they'll play the game pretty tight. They'll play their guys a ton of minutes. Hawks bottom 7 pick and roll defense, so clear path for James Harden to put up a big score tonight. Kawhi, this feels like max price Kawhi right now, but the matchup is really good. They're going to put a lot of inexperienced wing defenders on him to start. Probably going to be Ricochet, maybe some Mo Gay. They might try to toss like Dominic Barlow. Definitely putting some George Niang on him. Like he's going to cook all those guys they put in front of him. It's just like, is he putting up enough to win you a GPP? Maybe 55 is enough at his price tonight. I could definitely see that happening. But I love the matchup for Zubac the most here. But I think the thing you got to consider is if Ben Simmons is in, would probably dial back his minutes a little bit than what he's projected at, just because they've negatively correlated in a decently big way. Like in those games that Simmons is playing, they want to get him out there for a lot of the small ball minutes, and that's eating into Zubac in a pretty big way. Like kind of in like the 33, 34 minute range versus being like averaging around 39 per minute games per minutes or minutes per game in the last few games that Ben Simmons has missed. But yeah, he's just been crushing it in the pick and roll stuff right now. Hawks give up a lot of volume there, so just a lot to like about Zubac if Ben Simmons were to miss. And then Bogdanovich, I don't think that he's the worst play tonight, kind of coming back around on him after I've been shitting on him since he came over to the Clippers, or really all season long. But
he balled out. I know he got the start last night, or what was that, 2 nights ago?
Yeah,
I think it was the first time all season. I didn't throw it in the chat because I was already dead, but it's the first time all season I rostered him. I actually felt good about it, you know.
Yeah,
and
he crushed.
put up a good one.
Yeah, double-double, 30-point double-double. Like it was nice to see him get back to that form. I don't know if it's going to continue, but there might be a little bit of revenge in his heart. Like it was kind of, I don't know if he was even like happy or sad about leaving Atlanta, but I feel like there was a little bit of things kind of ended abruptly and kind of messy, so he might have a little bit of revenge. So I don't think that he's the worst option. Like I'll definitely keep my player pool. You don't need to get a ton to get overweight because he's going to be like 1%, 2% owned probably. But Atlanta does give up a ton of 3-pointers, so there is a clear path for him to put up a big score as well. Shifting over to the Atlanta side, it's pretty quick. Like you could play Trae Young if you have the stones to. The matchup is really tough. Chris Dunn, I think, matches up perfectly with him. Just Chris Dunn is kind of like the prototypical defender you'd want in a guy like Trae. And it was just, crazy for him to get there in such a big way last time when he made 0 3-pointers, 21 free throw attempts.
Yeah.
He went 21
he
for
didn't
21.
miss one, right? He was 21. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That
Yeah.
kind of takes you back. You realize like how important, obviously the tag has gotten there, but you realize how important guys like that are because when he goes to the line, it's like, okay, well, I've got my 2 points locked in almost.
Yeah, for sure. He's one of the, he's probably like top 5, for sure top 10 free throw shooter ever from a percentage standpoint. Yeah. So, it's hard to know like when the spike in it's something like that is going to happen. I think there was like a clear, like the matchup for Charlotte was pretty good. So I think there was like a clear case to make to play him in that one. Tonight, I don't really see it. So I probably won't be playing much. Definitely not in my single entry player pool. But if I get to a handful in GPPs in like the 150 max stuff, then I'd be okay with that. That's probably it. Like I hate the matchup for Okongwu. I don't think there's enough upside for Dyson. Like maybe a little bit of sneaky upside on George Niang and Terrence Mann. They've been playing pretty good since coming over in the trade. It's a revenge for Terrence Mann as well. yeah, those are probably the only guys I'm considering. I just don't really like the Atlanta side as much.
To kind of touch on that, that's what I had written down. Man and Niang, do you think this is a spot where Gay might come out of the lineup and one of these guys start, just kind of the matchup on the other side, or is that getting a little too cute in the thought process and hoping something changes?
It just depends on how he does early on, because they've given him a longer leash in the games that he plays well, obviously, but like I could really see Kawhi taking it to him and maybe that leash getting pulled earlier. So they did. I was watching the game against Philly, I believe. I mean, they kind of want to close with Niang over him. I don't think that Niang is going to start, but it could be like a 2-minute earlier rotation for Niang if things are going poor for Mo Gay. Like where Terrence Mann fits in, I don't really know, because I don't think they're gonna Terrence Mann is too small to play on Kawhi, I would think, and they already have Dyson on Harden, so I don't really know. It's kind of hard for me to paint a picture for like an increase in minutes for Terrence Mann, other than he's been playing pretty well. But like I could kind of see Niang getting up there a little bit, like maybe closer to 30 versus 26.
Yeah, no, love it. Obviously gets the minutes and he chucks. I think, I know we're getting too deep into hypotheticals here, but I think Mann would be a play if one of the few possibilities of Niang getting the start, which I agree probably won't, but if he did, then he gets all the second team off the floor. But no, agree with everything. I think, Zubac at a max price, Kawhi into 20% ownership at 8,700. Yes, the matchup is great, but I think for myself, it's James Harden or bust. And I do like, if making tons of lineups, getting a few pieces of Bogdan, just kind of because, obviously revenge narrative, but, he would classify as a shooter, like when your confidence is back. I think he'll have no conscious extra. Obviously he has that, but that would be an interesting spot there. All right, getting to the Mavs and Rockets, 12-point spread in favor of the Rockets, 218 total. And we have ourselves an 8K Najee Marshall on the other side. I'm going to let you take it here. We want to get to some of these Rockets, I think, specifically kind of the bigs, but kind of a tough spot in a 12-point spread, and the price is, pretty expensive, So where are we going here? Obviously, we're waiting on Exum, PJ Washington, Kai Jones, and Brandon Williams news, as they're all questionable. But where are we going here? And are you going to be trying to get some of these Rockets in your lineups?
I don't think I'm really going out of my way to do it. I'll touch on this game in a second, but we probably have enough time to answer a few questions in chat, just because this one's going to be a quick breakdown. In terms of this, you are that's almost 19K in salary you're eating up playing those two guys. I think that might be a little bit too much. But I don't know. What do you think about that? Would you play Harden and Zoo together?
I think they could correlate really well, right? We're going to get a few assists down low to be able to finish, but it is tough because we are kind of seeing the ceiling prices of Zubac and even Harden. So yes, I personally like it in hypotheticals, pairing these guys together, right? I talk about it, over previous shows, getting guards with guards that are going to pass to each other for 5-point plays. Same can kind of go for that, but I would agree. I think they're just a little bit too expensive. And I think specifically in this spot, I'd just go Harden and kind of hope that Zubac, either, doesn't get not full run, but doesn't get that extra couple of minutes in rotation. But to kind of finalize, I think if Ben Simmons is in, absolutely not. And, definitely think about it a little bit harder if Ben Simmons is out.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm doing this off screen now, so I feel like my body feels fine. I don't feel sick anymore. It's just that lingering end of the sickness. This is the worst part of it, in my opinion. I just hate being so congested all the time.
Absolutely. Shout out to Rio though, getting through a tough time. I'll be the first to say I missed the show early in the season because I was sick, and him no days off keeps grinding. So shout out to you.
Yeah, grinding my cock down to the nub for the members. But so yeah, the Dallas side, it's a full stay away for me. This team is just bad right now. Like I said, they're going to be trying to rush these guys back because they're just playing these guys too many minutes. I'm not I'm going to be like the Simpsons meme, the chalkboard. I'm not playing AK Najee Marshall. I just keep getting roped into playing this fucker, and he just doesn't do it for me. I missed out luckily the game against Phoenix, I think that was a weekend game, so I didn't even consider him. But like the Memphis one, the Milwaukee one, where I was saying he was a poor play at 6K, took it to me, but I'm not like, there's no chance of paying 8K for him. And like PJ, he's going to be very limited if he returns. 6.5K for Clay. Yeah, right. Like the only one I would consider is Brandon Williams, but I would need to X him out. I would need him starting again for me to play him. So yeah, Dallas X out for me. Houston, I could get to a little bit more of these guys, but damn, bro. I mean, 10K for Alperen Sengun, that's a tough price to pay. I mean, he hasn't paid that off in quite some time. There is a chance for him to do it here, just with how bad the front court defense is for the Dallas right now. They've been giving up a ton of rim points, a ton of rebounds. The Rockets are one of the higher volume rim scoring teams, one of the best rebounding teams as well. So there's paths for Sengun to get there. I mean, I'm struggling to justify paying almost 10K for him personally.
It's funny, sorry to interrupt, but before I looked at the prices, I was kind of going through the games. I'm thinking, wow, circle, smash bot. And I was hoping like 91, 9,200. Then you see 99, you're kind of like, damn, man, that's a complete change on what we're thinking here.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, great spot. Like if he was 8.5K, I'd be firing him up for sure, but 10K is a lot. Jalen Green has had the better role between him and Fred VanVleet, so you could make a case for him being worth the price tag. I do think that Dallas has decent guard defenders to make it a little bit tougher for him, so I don't really love it. Tari Eason is probably the guy that I would get to the most of if I'm playing anybody on this Houston side. He's not going to play in the back, so they're on a back-to-back, so he won't play tomorrow. If he's ruled in today, I'd assume that he's probably good to go, but they could rule him out throughout the day. Just with how bad the front court is for Dallas, like I think it's a good spot to be attacking with a guy like Tari Eason. So yeah, if he's probably playing 30+ minutes. I mentioned it, the game against Phoenix, Jabari Smith did play more minutes than him, even to come off the bench because they like that matchup. But I would expect it to flip in Eason's favor tonight.
Yeah, he was really, that would be probably because of the price on Sengun, he would fall into it. 6,200, is this a guy that if this game gets out of hand, obviously really tough to predict, but I, in my head, was thinking he would probably get the most run of the starters, not by a lot, but a few minutes. Would you agree there? Or is it kind of like when this game's out of hand, it's kind of like a hockey shift change?
Were you talking about Tari Eason?
Yeah.
Maybe like they might just try to get him to like 32 regardless, because they probably know that he's not playing tomorrow. But I don't think like you would need the game to be like really out of hands for Houston to pull the plug, because they don't really do that. Like they kind of play their main guys full minutes like until the game is fully out of hand. So yeah, it's a tough thing to predict, but I would think that they probably want to get Tari back up to like 28-30 tonight.
Absolutely. Good. No, absolutely love it. And then same kind of boat. I know, we don't want to get to many of these Mavs, but if Kai Jones, was able to play this game, would you put him on the same minutes limit as kind of PJ? Like, what would you say? Max 18 minutes? Are we in the right boat there? And because of that, they're both completely out of play, correct?
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Great. All right. Hey, this is going to be a really fun one. Another fantasy doozy. Cavs at the Grizzlies, 2.5, or it went from 2.5 down to 2 for the Cavs. 245.5 total. Obviously Donovan Mitchell is out. Aldama is out. The big question here, I'm leaning toward Triple J. He is questionable. I'm leaning toward doubtful or out. Would you agree there? And then DeAndre Hunter probable to play. Fun game to watch. Fun game to have players in. I'm excited to hear what you think about this one.
Yeah, I do think that Jaren is more on the doubtful side of things. Like if he plays tonight, it wouldn't be like a miracle, but he'd be a week and a half ahead of schedule for somebody that rolled up their ankle as bad as he did. So it kind of just seems like he's I would say like more on the 50-50 to doubtful side of things. That number, man, 2.5 for Cleveland is just screaming my name. But last couple times I did that, it got buried, so I'm not going to touch it. But yeah, this should be a really, really good game to attack. The Memphis side kind of seems similar to like the Atlanta side, where these prices are way up there. I think it's a little bit safer to get to the Memphis side, and I will touch on those guys when I break that down. But This is just a huge game total. Memphis has been playing so fast. Their defense hasn't been that great, and Cavs are just rolling on defense or on offense right now. Third in offense post All-Star break. Grizzlies are fifth in pace. So it kind of matches up really well here. It's just one of those games where you can somewhat overlook the matchups because I don't think there's really never been an area that has stood out against this Cleveland defense. They've done a great job against pick and roll guys. Really good job protecting the paint. Maybe 3-pointers you could say is kind of the way to attack them. But I still have interest in these Memphis guys just because the game total is so high and the game is projected to be close. But I'll start on the Memphis side or the Cleveland side of things because there's a lot to talk about here, a lot to like here. Evan Mobley saw a really big spike in front court touches last game, which was expected with no Donovan Mitchell, no Ty Jerome. But his like him as a play is a little bit more dependent on the Jaren Jackson availability because if Jaren is out, then you're talking about a lot of lesser defenders like Vince Williams. I don't think could really do a great job defending Evan Mobley personally. I think Vince is pretty good, but probably a little bit better against guards. So it'd probably be like, who are they throwing on him? Like Gigi Jackson, he's young, a little bit undersized, defending Evan Mobley. So it'd be a really good spot for Mobley if Jaren does get ruled out. The role is as good as you would expect for him with Donovan Mitchell off the court. 27% usage, 25% assist, 17% rebounding rate, 1.43 fantasy points per minute, averaging 45 DraftKings points per game in games without Donovan Mitchell this season. So yeah, love Evan Mobley tonight. Dropping down to the next guy, Darius Garland. I like the matchup for him regardless. I don't really like. I think Jalen Wells will be really good, a good defender moving forward in his career, but right now, not enough for me to get off of Darius Garland. I mean, he definitely buried both of us that night. It looked like he was going to be a good fade. Only had like 7 to 10 points in his first rotation. Was at like 17 or something at halftime, and then just obviously went off in the second half.
It's funny because all those guys were on pace to, they were all popular. Strus and Allen, everybody. And that would go as a top 5 tilt moment of the season, I think, is watching them. I mean, every time I looked up, it was like 4 fantasy points, 5 fantasy points for Garland. I think he had 21 in the fourth quarter or something crazy like that, real life points.
Yeah, I think it was 18 in the fourth, but 23 or something in the second half.
Yeah, no. Oh man, that was definitely a tilting moment for sure. I still think, a good / great play as far as that slate went. But like I told you pre-show, I mean, I don't think I could do the fade again at 7,700.
Yeah, it's getting to that point of the season where that felt like you said, those 2 cute moments fading him. That's kind of like what I felt last night. I guess just kind of go over last night, but I faded Kobe White. I had 3% owned Damian Lillard. He did great, but it didn't really matter when Kobe White scored 47 to Dame's 51. So it just feels like you're not getting paid off enough by fading these types of guys right now. So yeah, that was definitely just kind of a lapse in my process fading him. I had some in 150 max, but well below the field, and I didn't play any of him in the single entry stuff. But tonight, I will definitely be playing him because I do like the matchup. I think just with the Grizzlies playing so fast-paced, they give up a ton of transition points. It sets up really well for Darius Garland. And then you look at the averages without Donovan Mitchell, 46.4 DraftKings points per game, had a huge game, a couple of really big games to kind of weight it up and a couple big to weight it down. So that feels pretty good, a pretty good number for him. But the role, really good, 32% usage rate, 35% assist percentage, 1.3 fantasy points per minute. So yeah, Garland, really good option here. They saw a little bit more minutes than I was expecting. Normally they've kept these guys in the low 30s. That might happen tonight with Ty Jerome back, but I still think that the matchup and just role is really good for him to kind of overlook that stuff. But Jared Allen, I would say, is probably my favorite option on Cleveland tonight. He's kind of got back to playing normal minutes. There was a stretch where he was playing in the low to mid 20s, been playing 30 to 34 in each of the last 3 games. Coming off of a 47-point DK outing, and you're kind of getting the same point per minute production between him and Mobley, but for 2,200 cheaper. Only center eligible, which is a little bit worse, but center is not great by any means tonight. Jared Allen is definitely the cream of the crop for me. He averages 1.37 fantasy points per minute, which is just behind Evan Mobley's 1.43. But for 2.2K cheaper. So yeah, Jared Allen, probably a guy that I'm going to be one of the first guys I'm clicking in single entry personally. I saw somebody ask about the single entry locks So there you go. And then Ty Jerome, he'll be back. Just got the rest. Been really good. Obviously from a permanent production without Spida this season, but the minutes haven't really been there in the games, averaging 26.5 minutes in the 4 games without Donovan Mitchell that he has played, but still been, good, averaging like around 30 DraftKings points, which would be great tonight. Like I would definitely play Jerome over Chris Paul personally. So that's kind of what I'm thinking of Cleveland. Max Strus, you can make a case for being a decent play just because Memphis gives up so many 3-point attempts and a lot of catch and shoot stuff. That's kind of where Strus gets the job done, but you also need efficient shooting, which he hasn't really done a ton this season. Switching over to the Memphis side, should be pretty quick. I think it's Ja and Bane or bust probably for me. Ja, 9.4K, price is up there, but he's playing a lot more minutes lately. Memphis does need wins, really high total. He gets a tougher matchup between him and Desmond Bane because it's going to be Isaac Okoro on Ja. Matches up really well with Ja, I would say. So I do lean Bane here. Bane should have Max Strus on him, which I think is a good matchup for him. So yeah, I like Bane a little bit more than Ja. You're getting a huge ownership discount on both these guys because I don't think it's going to be played very much. So like having, Jared Allen and Ty Jerome and then one of Bane or Ja or like Garland and Jared Allen, something like that, and Bane feels like a pretty decent starting point tonight. Zach Edey, I can't play. I think he's just too much of a risk of getting played off the court. So you can make the case for Brandon Clark. I think the up-tempo games definitely would be, a spot where you want to play Brandon Clark. Probably it, though. Like maybe Scottie Pippen Jr. He's been playing really well lately. Don't know if there's enough upside on this slate. So it's probably just Ja or John Bane or bust. And I don't expect Jaren to play tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I am Bane over Ja. Kind of to reiterate here what Richard said as you're blowing your nose. So pre-show, I had brought this up to Rio because when you look at Jared Allen over the last 3, obviously his production's been great, but his minutes have been 30, 32, and 34. Rio kind of set me straight, pre-show. Would you mind sharing what you shared with me regarding Allen getting played on or off the floor?
Yeah, so basically what my thought process on this was, and if you think I'm wrong, then that's fine. Like I'm not guaranteed to be right on this, but I don't think you're really too worried about Cleveland going small here because the small ball 5 that Memphis is running out there is Brandon Clark. Like it might be Jay Huff. I doubt it because he hasn't really been in the rotation, but it's probably Brandon Clark. Like when they're going with like the small ball, and Brandon Clark is not stretching the court, so you don't really worry too much about Allen being played off because he's not like Zach Edey. Like he's not struggling to get up and down the court in these fast-paced games. Like he's very athletic and capable. So I don't really think there's too much risk there. But like I said, if you think I'm wrong and you think that Allen's minutes comes down, then he's probably a pretty good fade if he's at like 28 minutes versus 22 or 32.
No, yeah. No, I agree with you. That was the kind of going through and kind of getting the notes. So the way that you explained that was absolutely perfect. Before we move on, would you agree 3 Cavs is okay, not 4, or are you going to kind of be at the 2 Cav for the majority of lineups?
No, I think 3 is good. Like I think it's totally fine to have 2 of Mobley, Garland, Allen, and then like Jerome or Strus. I think that's totally fine tonight.
Love it. All right, moving on to the exact opposite, in my opinion, of what we just talked about. Magic and T-Wolves. T-Wolves are favored by 10.5. 206, if my math is correct. It might have changed. 206.5 from a couple of hours ago. We are waiting on some very important KCP news, and Cole Anthony, both questionable tonight. Is this a check everybody off and keep moving type stuff, at least from the Magic side, or do you have anything you want to get into from this game?
Yeah, it just feels like a game. If you're playing much on the Orlando side, you're probably getting too cute. So I wouldn't really want to go out of my way to break down too much here. I mean, just talking about like Minnesota quickly, they've been playing great. They're getting healthier. Won 6 games in a row. Their defense is all the way back with Gobert and Randall getting healthier. Offense has been playing great, second in offense this month. They've had really efficient 3-point shooting. So there's a chance that like the highest scoring comes down a little bit just because Orlando does a pretty good job at taking away the 3-pointer. But I mean, they're just playing really good. And even Julius Randle, who we've been kind of as a collective, like kind of hating on, but he's been playing really good.
How many games have they won since he's back in the lineup? I saw that stat on Twitter. I don't want to say it's been like 12, but that's what I thought since he's been back from injury. Are they 12-0 since then?
It was like 12 or 11, something like that. Yeah. I'm sure Wardo's got that in his back pocket somewhere. But yeah, they're just playing really good.
11, look at that, right on cue.
There it is. Minnesota's been playing really well, and Orlando has not been playing well. Like, I give them credit for beating New Orleans last night, but like every team should be beating New Orleans in my opinion, and especially they should be putting up a lot of points. So, maybe they get back on track. I think Paulo is probably the only guy that I'm really considering, just because there's still upside for him, kind of regardless of matchup, and he's been playing pretty good, like kind of sneaky, playing really good. Has a 34-point game last night. He actually got me the live final split, so shout out to Paulo. But then 41 against Toronto, 41 against Golden State. I would say the Golden State one is a little bit more impressive just because they've been playing really good defense. Toronto, you probably should be putting up 40 against them. But yeah, so he's probably the only guy that I'm really considering. I don't think the matchup is good by any means, but like I said, he could still get it done against most teams.
And to kind of jump in there too, I believe it was the show with Tidal where Cole Anthony ended up missing. We talked about it. Cole Anthony has a higher usage percentage, than what I thought before we looked at it, kind of around the mid-20s. Would you be, obviously not a game we're targeting, but from the decision last night or whatever it may be, do we see ourselves, going to Paulo more when Cole Anthony's out, obviously? Because like I had mentioned on that show, the usage doesn't really get split with who replaces him. I think it goes to Franz and Paulo, that including a few extra assists. Is that kind of the thought process there when you roster a guy like that?
Yeah, definitely. Like Cole Anthony, like just what you said, like you're replacing Cole Anthony with Corey Joseph and like Anthony Black when he's out there. Like those are two pretty low usage guys. So it definitely makes those guys look a lot better. That wasn't really the reason why I was high on Paulo yesterday. It was more so just matchup based, but kind of lucked into getting Cole Anthony ruled out. But to kind of touch on that, like I wouldn't be fully off of a Corey Joseph starting at 3K just because he played 30 minutes. Was, he can do a little bit of, he can do some things like 12 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. That's a pretty solid night for somebody at 3K. So yeah, I wouldn't be like Xing him out if we do get news earlier in the day that Cole Anthony is out. But yeah, Orlando side, I mean, they're projected for like less than 98 points tonight. That's just gonna be really gross. But to the Minnesota side, it's the same thing. Like these guys are priced up. I don't mind Randall and Edwards. I think the matchup is probably a little bit better for Ant. He's been running really cold on like the potential assist stuff. But if KCP is out, like that's kind of a big deal for Ant. Like they'll be putting lesser defenders out there to defend him, like Anthony Black, and I don't know who exactly would be the 1-for-1 replacement for KCP, but KCP is a pretty solid on-ball defender, so I think that the matchup would get a little bit better for Ant. So yeah, I'd be okay with Edwards. I'd be okay with Randall. Don't love either in particular.
Yeah, and then, are you just checking off, secondary pieces obviously have been scoring well versus the Magic. So that's going to rule out McDaniels, especially at 6,700. That's going to rule off Conley. That's going to rule these guys off the bench for me personally. But no, couldn't agree more. You know what? And to kind of keep it simple and don't get too cute, at least for me personally, this is going to be a fade. Like I said, I love what the game projection was here. I missed it earlier, but it looks like we have from the King of Smack 102.98. I will be trying to bet the under then if that's the case.
I think he was talking about the Cleveland and Memphis game.
Oh, really? Okay. Damn. Then now definitely be betting the under in that. Okay. Hey, moving on. Last game of the night. Sorry to hear about our boy Fox out for the season. LaMelo
You knew that was coming.
Yeah, it's about time. But hey, I know you talked about it on the last show, but I did see that stat after, Cooper Flagg is favored to go back to Duke. Yeah. I know you touched on that, but damn, man, that would be fun to kind of see where he goes. Gonna have to wait another year for that. As if I was him, I would be collecting my $5 to $7 million playing college ball, hanging out. But to finish off the slate, what could be a very intriguing game: Hornets at Spurs, 231 total, 231.5 total, 2.5 point spread here for in favor of the Spurs. No real crazy injury news. I mean, LaMelo Ball's seeming to get into the swing of things. Bridges has been playing absolutely on fire. And curious to hear your thoughts about, kind of some of these Spurs guys, specifically Castle at 6,300. What are we thinking? Because we see a lot of ownership coming to this game.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a really good game to attack. I think Castle, probably his price going to shoot up in a pretty big way. I think moving forward, he's going to be playing a ton of minutes now, filling in. I would hope that they just start him. Like, I wouldn't put it past this coaching staff to do some weird shit and start like Jordan McLaughlin over him or something. But that'd be a total shock to me. I still think that he's going to be playing a ton of minutes moving forward. But I'll talk about what I'm seeing from the Spurs side in a second. Yes, the Hornets, they're just awful right now. They're playing a little bit better defensively. And I kind of always think that it's just because they play slower paced basketball, because nothing really stands out from like defensive metrics. Like they're giving up a ton of threes right now and not a ton of volume. And they're not giving up a ton of rim points, but that's just on really low volume. So it's probably just a product of their 3-point defense being so bad right now. But the Spurs are kind of equally as bad. They're dead last in defensive rating since the All-Star break, but they've been pretty good on offense. I checked their numbers in March alone. I think they're second or first in offensive rating, had a 124 or like 124, 126 offensive rating. So they've been capable of providing us with some really, really good game environments, kind of what you want to see with a team that struggles defensively but is good offensively. So yeah, hitting on the Charlotte stuff, I don't know. It's been a really rough go for LaMelo Ball lately. Hasn't put up a GPP winning score, which I would just say is like around 6x his price tag since January 12th. That's the last time he put up 60 DraftKings points, which I'm rounding up because it was like 59.5. So if you want to take shots on him, then go right ahead. I don't think that the matchup is bad by any means. He did have a pretty big game against Castle earlier in the year, so you can make the case for the matchup being pretty good. But I don't know. He just seems like disinterested right now. Is disinterested a word? It might be uninterested.
Either one. They work the same. Yeah, I'm not the grammar police over here, but somebody in chat might be able to chime in and let him know.
He seems not very interested right now in basketball. While Miles Bridges, I mean, he's just playing great. So, like, I'm not going to play LaMelo at almost 10K when I could get better production from a guy in a better matchup, in my opinion. Miles Bridges, just with how bad the rim defense has been for San Antonio lately since Wemby went down. And then you look at like the role that he's had over the last 6 games. He's top 54 DraftKings points in 5 of those last 6 games. Like 3 of those games were 64 plus. He has a 31% usage rate, which is behind LaMelo, 22% assist percentage, 11% rebounding rate. So all those things that I talk about a lot with Miles Bridges, like a guy that could be getting triple doubles. But he's first on the team in drives, and he's shooting 62% off of drives. And then he's second on the team in touch time. So the role has been very, very good for him. And kind of in summation, like the role is elite. The production has followed. The matchup is really good, with the rim defense being bad for San Antonio. And then even kind of building on that even more, like the last 2 weeks, San Antonio has given up the second most fantasy points to opposing power forwards. So just everything's kind of going in Miles Bridges' favor right now. So I definitely have a ton of interest in him. Makes a lot of sense when I'm going to have some San Antonio pieces as like a little correlation. You kind of hope that the game is fast pace, high scoring, and maybe we get overtime. Mark Williams has been very solid in back-to-back games, not playing a ton of minutes, so it's kind of tough to rely on him for a ton of upside. But they might extend him a little bit more in a close game. He's probably very unlikely to play 30 minutes moving forward because they are running out like a 3-headed monster at center, with him getting the bulk of the minutes. But he did get down to 26 last game, but was really efficient. Matchup-wise, I mean, the rim defense for San Antonio, very bad, but they're also the 3rd worst rebounding team without Wemby. So, yeah, a lot setting up for Williams to have a good night in the minutes that he's out there. And then I guess Daquan Jeffries, like he's been playing pretty good as a starter, playing a lot of minutes, 20.25 points, 26.5 points, 32, 34 minutes. So yeah, I don't hate him as a value option.
I won't intervene too much, but the Jeffrey stuff, I was watching that game because I rostered Melo and Bridges the other night. Man, there was like 3 or 4 possessions where he just completely looked off Melo and just went right to the rim, and it did score. So I think his confidence kind of like an all-time high, if you will.
Yeah, I mean he's always been a hooper. It's just had all the off-court stuff that kind of, I wouldn't say derailed his career, because he's probably going to end up going somewhere else next year and playing pretty well. But definitely like having, whatever 50, 60 game suspension hurts you. But yeah, he's always been really good. He's a Michigan guy, I believe, right?
That I do not know. I'm not dialed in like that, but definitely somebody in chat will jump in. As did our grammar police. Shout out to Little Neck. So Little Neck's got your back for sure. But but hey, what are we thinking on Spurs side? Sorry to interrupt you mid game.
No, it's all good. Yeah, so we do have a decently large sample this season without Wemby and Fox off the court. So I'm just going to kind of like rattle off all these numbers to kind of compare, and you guys can do whatever you want with them. But Keldon does lead the way from a usage bump standpoint, 3.5% there, 1.08 fantasy points per minute. He's probably unlikely to see like a crazy spike in minutes, but 26 to 28 is probably enough for him to be a viable fantasy option. I do like the matchup for him a good bit. So I have interest in Keldon. Stephon Castle is next in usage, plus 2.3%, 1.12 fantasy points per minute, and he's going to be the top option for me. I just really think they're going to let him loose the rest of the season, kind of get that rookie of the year locked in, which I think he already does have it. Which I also get you. Like I've been seeing a lot of positive, I don't want to say propaganda, but like a lot of positive speak about Alex Sarr and Zach Richache. Richache's been playing a lot better, but I feel like Castle is kind of like light years better than them talent wise.
I think he does it on both sides of the floor too. If we're looking at a whole basketball player, so. But yeah, I'm with you.
Okay.
And you know what? That makes sense. I could envision him in that jersey once that comes up, I think.
Yeah. Okay. He's from Flint. All right, just catching up on the chat. So yeah, I think Castle just kind of going to be running away with this job moving forward. He's definitely the top option. I think the price is going to move up pretty. They've been very aggressive with the pricing for San Antonio. Like these guys got up to $7K really quickly. Well, like Vassell and Castle were like, or I think Sochan was like 7.2K for a little bit. I think Castle got up to 7K, but De'Aaron Fox was still like 8K. So it's kind of weird how they did that, had the interns working overtime. From a point per minute perspective, it is Chris Paul that leads the way there. But like I said, like I just don't – he's probably capped like 25 now. Has a top 25 in 3 straight games. They don't really have a reason to play him more. Like it makes sense to get these young guys out there a little bit more. So I'm probably going to be taking an underweight stance on a decently chalky Chris Paul. But like I said, if the Boston and Philly stuff doesn't hit the way that we need it to, then I won't be making like any rules to get off of Chris Paul just because he'd probably be the best of a bad bunch of value plays tonight. But I do think that the Philly and Boston stuff is probably going to open up a good amount of value to get me off of Chris Paul. Sochan doesn't really see too much of a increase in anything to really to like note down, but Devin Vassell, his numbers haven't looked great in the minutes without Wemby and Fox, only 22% usage rate, 0.97 fantasy points per minute. But he has shown some very appealing upside lately, going for 45.5, I believe, last game, and then 72 out of nowhere.
Did he triple-double that night with 72? Did he get there?
Let me check.
I thought it was close. I could be thinking about the wrong guy, but I'm almost certain he was either flirting with it or did get there in that 72% or 72.
He had the double-double, but just 37 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 steals, 1 block. So just did literally everything.
Every bucket.
Yeah. But it was like I didn't watch that game, but I just looked at some of like the numbers, and it was just an extremely efficient like shooting night from everywhere. Basically, obviously you have to do that to get 37 points, but it wasn't even like a ton of volume. He only shot the ball 20 times, so that's really quite impressive. So yeah, I like what I've seen from him lately, and I do think that he would be the guy that they'd probably be okay running up a little bit just because he's a younger dude. So yeah, I prefer Castle and Vassell over Chris Paul by a pretty wide margin. I don't mind Sochan. I don't really like Harrison Barnes, but I do like Keldon Johnson. Kind of what I'm thinking on San Antonio.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I guess if you were making a handful of lineups, kind of my only question from this game, but if you find yourself where, hey, I'm making 150 or I'm making 100 lineups, who would be that secondary option for you? I think Bridges, for me, if I was making that many lineups, would be my one Hornet that I wanted to play. But let's say you wanted to get exposure to like a 2-and-2 type scenario. Is it, even though Melo is more expensive and not necessarily the best, kind of mental as basketball, does he still outweigh Mark Williams as that secondary piece that you want to sneak in there? Or are you willing to take some shots that Mark Williams is going to be really productive in those kind of less minutes than we're used to?
Yeah, I would kind of be taking shots on Mark Williams, I think. Just been a lot better from a per minute standpoint last month or so than LaMelo has. So in your like it is a lot of opportunity cost because center is normally a position you really can't whiff on. But the same thing goes for point guards. Like there's some decent options up top at point guard, like $700 more to get to James Harden. I would do any day of the week. I'd probably even prefer to get down to John Morant if I had to choose between LaMelo and Ja tonight. So yeah, I would think Mark Williams is probably the second guy that I would look to behind Bridges, or just go down to Daquan Jeffries and kind of just hope that he gets you another 20 and that like neither Mark Williams or LaMelo pop off in a big way that buries you.
Absolutely. Love it. Well, that is all 7 games here Friday night. You know, I know when you do, you know, shows with Ham or specifically Ham, not really sure what you guys do with Title, but you guys kind of always do the 6X play. I won't do that unless you had that planned pre-show. But if you wanted to kind of give them like a one sentence on how you are approaching the slate or a certain type of game you're getting to, what would be that statement for the people?
Yeah, I mean, I would prefer to give like a 6X play that's going to be lower owned because all the guys that I'm looking to, like you're not going to get past people. It's like Jared Allen, Vassell, and Stephon Castle, I think are all great options tonight. Probably going to be a mainstay in multiple of my lineups. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's kind of just trying to simplify the slate. Like I do think that it's getting a little bit too cute, getting to anybody on Dallas and possibly even anybody on Houston. And then Orlando and Minnesota game feels like closer to a fade than normal. But also I will say, just to kind of play a little bit devil's advocate, like the game that was the closest line last night was the Pelicans and Magic game. And the one that was the highest spread was Wizards and Detroit. And you needed the guys in the Detroit, well, for sure, like Cade you needed. So I wouldn't say to like full fade these large spreads. And also you don't really have to go all in on the close ones because there's a lot of weird things happening right now in the NBA. So I don't really have like a ton of confidence in any of the games that are projected to stay close. But it's pretty clearly like the 5:30, 6 p.m. window, the Clippers, Hawks, Cleveland, Memphis, Charlotte, San Antonio is going to be where a bulk of my exposure is going to be tonight.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And kind of to touch on what we've been saying, just I'm personally not going to get cute. You know, if I'm wrong tonight, you know, then it is what it is. I'm going to keep moving forward. And that's what we do slate by slate. All right, buddy. I appreciate. Oh, there you go. Go for it.
I got one.
Okay.
It's all right. So this is dependent on Jeff Dowtin missing, but if he misses, then I'm going to be taking some swings on Jalen Hood-Schifino.
Love that. He's flat 3K, correct?
Yeah, 3K.
Flat 3K. All right, you guys heard it here first. Friday night, man, that was fun. Appreciate it. Good luck in your head-to-head tonight. Hopefully you find yourselves with a couple of outs in the 100-man field. It is, right, for the final next week?
Yeah, 100-man. Yep.
100-man. All right, well, good. We'll all be rooting you on. I'm very excited to kind of hear and see what you end up playing. But good luck. Good luck to everybody else in your contest. And let's ship it.